Hey guys, this is Eckhart Hello and welcome to another Star Wars Legends lore video. So recently, I've been reading Tatooine Ghost by Troy Denning. Tatooine Ghost is a really interesting story because it takes place in the post-Endor period right before the Thrawn campaign, but was actually written in 2003 with both the prequels and Attack of the Clones featuring within the story. That's obviously interesting because Heir to the Empire, the Thrawn trilogy as a whole, and in fact, the entire Bantam era of Star Wars books were written before the prequels were even a thing. So Tatooine Ghost had the opportunity to incorporate elements of the prequels into a sort of pre-existing story, but was also somewhat limited because the Thrawn campaign chronologically was happening right afterwards, so you couldn't do a whole lot with the characters that would really change things too much, if that makes sense. It would be like if they went and made an episode 5.5 between episode 5 and episode 6, using information from the prequels, the sequels, whatever else. So Tatooine Ghost, unsurprisingly, sees Han and Leia visiting Tatooine, trying to recover a lost piece of artwork from Alderaan known as Killik Twilight. Killik Twilight is not only extremely valuable because it was created in a way only possible on Alderaan, which is obviously now destroyed, but also, as the New Republic knows, because it contains secret information about New Republic spy networks. The search for Killik Twilight, which is also being pursued by the Empire, leads Han and Leia across Tatooine, visiting many places from the prequels, with Han and Leia interacting very closely with ideas and concepts and persons from that era. For example, one of the main characters of the book is a now much older Kitster, Anakin's little friend from episode 1. They visited the site of the Boonta Eve Classic, where Anakin won his freedom over 40 years later, and they interact with a lot of people who knew Anakin as a young boy. Even though much of the galaxy know his fate as Darth Vader, he's still quite well loved on the planet because he was really nice as a kid, and he is a local hero for winning the pod race. However, probably the most interesting connection to the prequel trilogy, in my opinion, is Leia's discovery of a data disk which belonged to her grandmother, Shmee Skywalker. Tatooine Ghost actually fills out a lot of Shmee's life after Anakin left. We learned how she is eventually freed. We learn more about her relationship with Watto, including the fact that the two were somewhat fond of each other. They were friends despite, the master-slave relationship. We learn that Watto was actually quite depressed after Anakin left, and ultimately we learn a little bit more about the end of Shmee's life. So Shmee, as you guys know, was bought by Klieg Lars, and she moved from working for Watto to working at the Lars homestead. However, one year, the Tusken Raiders got more and more aggressive, and eventually they kidnapped her, and the rest is history. However, what I never thought of before reading the book is what actually happened to the remainder of the Sand People on the planet. Anakin comes and essentially wipes out an entire village. That must have affected local Sand People populations from across the region. And yeah, it did. Anakin inadvertently set up decades of violence and torture and horrors which the Sand People would inflict upon themselves and other sentients in the area. So when the Sand People came to find one of their village completely wiped out, and again,
and not just the men, but the women and the children too.
They were led to believe that it was because of some supernatural event. The Sand People believed, and I quote, that an entire tribe had been hacked to pieces by an angry ghost. Now all Tuskens stopped there to present gifts and make sacrifices before leaving the area. Eventually, as Leia makes her way through Shmee's recordings, she figures out that Anakin in fact was the angry ghost, and Anakin's loss of his mother and that resulting in his first step towards the dark side really helps humanize the person to Princess Leia. At this point, Leia really still hates Anakin, but like Luke in Star Wars Legends at least, she would come to forgive him and would even name a son Anakin Solo. However, my description earlier of the Sand People's actions after the slaughter probably understates just how bad things really were. The sacrifices, of course, took place at the spot of the former Tusken Raider camp, and there were literally hundreds of skulls there, all brought to this place and sacrificed by the Tusken Raiders. And you know, this wasn't just shooting them with a gun or something, they were typically strapped up and hacked apart, and I think the book really explains it the best. Leia could not bear to look longer, as horrified as she was by what Shmee had suffered. As much as it pained her to contemplate what had happened there, she was even more appalled by the ghastly cycle her father had set in motion. All in all, I really enjoyed Tatooine Ghost. I think some of the prequel references are maybe a bit ham-fisted. We got sort of the same thing with the Dark Nest crisis, because at that point prequel content was available for EU writers, so sometimes they relied on it a bit too much, and to be fair, they had to make up for literal decades of not knowing what the Clone Wars were or what exactly happened to Anakin, so it does kind of make sense. I like Tatooine Ghost as well because the good guys are going up against Thrawn, but they don't even realize it, and it's a nice sort of prelude to the Thrawn trilogy, which takes place very shortly after. That's all I've got for today though, guys. Pretty short video. I'll get to a hashtag Ask That question next time. Until then though, be safe and may the Force be with you.